Now, this is a true story, and there are 3 points in this story where it'll be obvious that it's a true story, because there are 3 things I could never get away with if I was making this story up. They're too ridiculous for fiction. And the first one is this. The 3 kids that made my life a living hell in middle school were all named Corey. First, there was Corey Bray. He was your broad-shouldered, meathead jock kind of guy. He would give you shit in the hallway, maybe push you into a locker or something, but he wasn't going to punch you in the face, because then he'd get kicked off the wrestling squad, and he didn't want to spend a week without his face in a dude's crotch. Just saying. Then there was Corey Kassoon, who was the shit kicker kid. He wore a cowboy hat and cowboy boots to school every day. And he came by them honestly because his family owned a ranch and was actually quite wealthy. But I also tried to wear my cowboy boots the first day of school. But I didn't have cowboy boots because we were wealthy or owned a ranch. We were neither of those things. My parents bought them for me to teach me how to walk. Because at that age, and from the time I learned to walk until then, I walked like this. So my parents bought me the cowboy boots so that I would feel the heel hit the ground and could learn to walk heel toe, and it worked, because after that I walked like this. But I eventually figured it out. By the time I graduated high school, I actually could swing my arms back and forth. I had to check which way you're supposed to swing them. But anyway, so the first time I saw Corey and Kassoon and I was wearing my boots, he told me in no uncertain terms that if I wore the boots to school again, he would shove them up my ass. And every time I saw him afterward, he kind of did the like, thing that douches do. Like, yeah. But both of those guys were annoying, but the kid that really scared the shit out of me was Corey fucking Ransauer. Charles Dickens could not have come up with a better name for that asshole than Corey Ransauer. He had he had a kind of ginger hair, freckles, this kind of killer smile that did not touch his dead eyes. Like, he was the dirthead kid who came from a bad home. I mean, like, back in the day, all of us were getting spanked with belts. That was just kind of what happened. And thankfully, I didn't get any fetishes or anything as a result. But we could tell Corey's dad did it when he was drunk and he used the buckle. So that's Corey. In a nutshell, like, now I feel kind of bad for him. Back then, I was just scared shitless because he reminded me of the 80s bullies, like the Karate Kid bully and the Goonies bully, who seemed to just be out to fucking murder a kid. And I could tell if he ever got his hands on me, he would. So the first day of school, I got off the bus, and across the quad was Corey fucking Ransauer, and he looked at me and he said, "Joshua Nite, I'm going to kick your big fat ass." And he ran straight at me, and I ran away from him as fast as my legs could carry me. And I finally got to the safety of a classroom and a teacher. And that happened every fucking day for a week. Pause. Oh no, my shit got ripped. Who do you got working props back there? Ripped my shit. That probably happened. I probably did that. It's good. So that happened every day for a fucking week. And so I decided, fuck it, I'm not riding the bus to school anymore. All that ever happens on that bus is people make fun of me and call me a faggot, because that's what you do back then. And so Micah and I decided we would walk the back way to school through my jungle that I had ruled all summer. And so we did. The first day was great. We snuck the back way to school, and I got to class before Corey got to me. The second day, as we emerged from my woods, there, standing on the dirt road leading up to the back of the school, was Corey fucking Ransauer. And he yelled, "Joshua Nite, I'm going to kick your big fat ass." And he ran at me, and I ran away, and I barely escaped with my life. So then I didn't know what to do. I had tried talking to the principal, to the teacher about this kid, but back in the 80s, there was this kind of idea that there were 2 ways to deal with bullies, and one of them was just stop being so fucking weird, and maybe just act like everybody else, and then maybe they'll leave you alone. And the other was stand up to them and kick the shit out of them. And I couldn't, because Corey was bigger than me. I was probably bigger than him a little bit. he was, but he was stronger than me. I was probably stronger than him too. I was a pretty big kid, but he wanted to hurt people and I really didn't. And he didn't care if he got hurt and I really did. Care if I got hurt. I didn't care if he got hurt. So I was kind of stuck and I realized there was nothing that I could do about it. And then I figured there was probably something that a Maasai warrior king could do about it. So that night before I went to bed, I took out my Maasai warrior knife and I slipped it into my backpack. And I could see the scene in my head. Corey would come up and he would yell, and I would hold out my knife and he would run away, preferably wetting himself, and then never fuck with me again, because you don't fuck with the Maasai tribe. So the next day, we went off through the woods, and we didn't even make it out of the woods. Halfway through, up a hill, I looked up, and there on the trail, Corey motherfucking Ransauer forever. So he shouted, "Joshua Nite!" And I dropped my backpack to the ground, and I pulled out my knife, and I whipped it out of the sheath, and I held it up. And I didn't say anything. I just glared at him with a glare that said, "I am the king of the motherfucking jungle. Back up." And sure enough, Corey turned, and he ran toward me. I had no idea what to do with this. Hadn't he read the fucking script? When somebody waves a knife at you, you run away from them, preferably wetting yourself in the process. But no, he ran towards me. So I lowered the knife, and the blade was going back and forth because I was scared shitless. And he stopped just out of stabbing range, which probably saved his life. And he glared at me with utter contempt and disgust. And he said, "If you're going to pull a knife on me, you better fucking use it." And he spit right between my shoes. And then he turned to walk into school and said over his shoulder, "By the way, I'm telling." Which now, right? Back then I was terrified. So I knew that he was going to go tell the principal. And I had a very quick exchange and negotiation with Micah. I said, "Look, Micah, they're going to come and they're going to want to search my backpack, and I can't have the knife in my backpack, and I can't throw it away because I need to show it to my parents. So it needs to go in your backpack." And he said, "No. And I said, "Look, they're just going to search me. You have nothing to do with this." And he said, And I said, "Micah, if you don't take it, I'm going to have to lie to the principal when he asks me if I have a knife. And lying is the worst thing you can do. That is one of the 10 commandments." So he put it in his backpack, and we went off to see the principal. And here's the second part of my true story. Our principal's name was Mr. Acock. Now, if you have a name like Acock, you stay the fuck away from a middle school, right? But no, he was the principal. I've got to pick up my pace a little. Oh, well. So let me scratch some things off. So he called. As soon as we got to the school, he called both of us into the office. And I was shaking, and Micah was shaking harder, and he said, "Josh, do you have anything you want to tell me?" And I said, "No," and that was true. And he said, "I heard that you brought a weapon to school. Do you have a weapon?" And I said, "No," and that was also true. And he said, "Do you mind if I search your backpack?" And I said, "No," and that was also true. So he dumped out my backpack, and he went through it, and he didn't find anything, and he was about to let us go. But the thing is, Micah's backpack was my old backpack that I had discarded because it had gotten too worn and tattered, but it was good enough to donate to someone who was trying to save lost heathen souls for Jesus. So when Micah picked up his backpack, on the floor. So I was busted, and they let Micah go after I told them he had nothing to do with it, and they sent me to ISS, in-school suspension. Now that, if you're not familiar with it, is the worst punishment for anyone who is normal and the best punishment for a kid like me, because I got to sit there all day and I didn't get to eat lunch with my friends and I didn't get to talk to anybody. And when I finished my schoolwork halfway through the day, I got to sit and read Stephen King all day long. So while I was in ISS, Micah was very concerned that I wasn't there, so he went to the payphone and he called my mother and he dialed 602-778-2492. And he said, Mrs. Knight, is Josh there? Well, no, Micah, Josh is at school. Isn't he? Isn't he? Well, I don't want to get him in trouble, he said. So when I got home, I actually ended up not being in trouble. I kind of think my parents saw how afraid I was, and they also saw that maybe they shouldn't have given their idiot savant child a knife. So I kind of got away with it, and that would be the end of the story, except for true story number 3, which is my freshman year of college. I was at school in NAU, which was a small mountain town, a little ways away from Prescott, and attending school, and I was walking down the street to class with my backpack, and a car pulled up next to me at a stoplight, and the window rolled down, and a voice said, Joshua Knight! I looked over, and it was Corey motherfucking Ransauer, and my heart fell into my butt, and I was 11 years old again. And I realized, we're both adults. He's in a car. It's fine. So, I was like, hey, Corey, what's up, man? I'm going to school. It's, what are you up to? And Corey turned to me and grinned that grin that I had come to fear so deeply. And he said, and I stress, this is a true story. I'm teaching kindergarten, man. Isn't that the shit? So clearly my encounter with him had scared him so badly that he eventually got his life in order. And my encounter with him had scared me so badly that I eventually became somewhat less of an arrogant, socially awkward prick. So I guess that's the best revenge there is.
Ladies and gentlemen, Josh Knight.